Hello, everybody. My name is Craig, and I'm an alcoholic from Gainesville, Georgia. Glad to be with you guys today, and glad to see my friend Carol. Carol's been an important part in my sobriety, and I see her at a lot of meetings. So I go to a lot, she goes to a lot, and boy, she's helped me point me in the right direction. We need those kinds of people in this program to be of service and to help and to guide us and lead us in the right direction. And my sobriety date's September the 20th, 2021. So I've just got just over a year of sobriety. But, today I can sit in front of you guys and tell you that I'm recovered. At one time I thought I was cured of this disease. I had 15 years of sobriety, and I went back out there. And I'll get into that in a few. But, I have a sponsor. His name's Troy, and he has a sponsor. His name is Matt. And thank goodness for sponsorship. I love what it says on page 45 of the big book. It says the whole point, main object of this program, of this book, is for us to find a power greater than ourselves, that will solve all our problems or solve my problems. And I love that because, that's what this book does, and the question is, how in the heck does that book do that, right? Working the steps for the sponsors, how it's worked with me, and man, I'm so grateful for it. So today I'm going to tell you what I used to be like, what happened to me, and what I'm like today. I know I hear in meetings that I go to all over the world, people say, I'm not going to tell you much about what it used to be like because you guys, you know what it's like. But I think it's so important for us to tell our story. We're storytellers. We need to tell our stories on what I used to be like, so you can say, hey, I used to think like that. I used to be like that. I used to drink like that, because, new people coming into the rooms, they need to hear that. Also, I think people that have been around this program need to hear that. I need to be reminded, to trigger those feelings on what I used to do and how I used to think, and how I think today. And so I think it's very important for us to share about what I used to be like. So today I'm going to share a little bit about what I used to be like, and I'm going to get into the program of recovery. And I grew up here in Gainesville, it's North Georgia, and I had a normal childhood. My parents were a middle class family. My parents were not alcoholic. I had a grandfather that was an alcoholic that I never met. He died 15 years before I was born. Congratulations on Bill, sobriety date 1970. That's when I was born. 52 years. That's awesome. And congratulations to Tracy on 6 months. And with you guys announcing that tells me that this program does work. And so I had a normal childhood, but I knew I was a little bit different. I knew from early on that I felt like I was missing the playbook. I was like, man, something's just a little bit different about me. I can remember when my dad dropped me off at first grade. I'm not sure if I was born an alcoholic, but I know when I got dropped off at first grade, I could have used a drink that day. I just knew it didn't fit in, and man, I always wanted to fit in, but I felt like I was different from people. I was not a part of. I felt like just something was off. Now I wanted to be a part of, and I did everything I could do to be a part of, but it didn't come naturally like it did for the other kids. And so I set off on. I was raised in a family that you work hard, you study hard, you'll do well. In life. You want something, go get it. So I was always enjoyed studying and making good grades. I really enjoyed sports. But I like the story about Bill, that I've heard, about the boomerang. And I can relate to that because when I was a kid, Bill, he made a boomerang. Now, wasn't anything crazy about him making a boomerang, but his grandfather challenged him and basically told him, there's no person over here in America that knows how to make a boomerang. Now, Bill set out on making a boomerang, and wasn't nothing crazy about making a boomerang other than that's all he did for 6 months was make a boomerang. And finally, he took his headboard and made a boomerang out of his headboard, and he took it out to the church cemetery and he threw it, and it came around the churchyard, and he said about took his grandpa's head off. But after he made the boomerang, he stopped, and that was the end of that. And I can relate to that. I obsessed as a kid over things, If I went fishing, that's all I did. I wanted to go fishing every single day, and I couldn't just have one fishing pole. I got to have 20 fishing poles, and I got to catch the biggest fish, and I've got to go every day, and I've got to catch more than you. And man, it's just I had that obsessive compulsive behavior from day one, and most time it helped me. It helped me in school. I studied. It made me want to study hard, and I knew if I wanted something, I had to study it and read it and understand it. And in sports, it helped me. If I wanted to be better than you, I had to go practice more than you, and so that's what I did. But I never felt a part of. Felt a little bit different until I was in about 15 years old. I had a guy that moved in next door to me, a couple of doors down. His name was Brian. He was from Panama, the country, and he moved up here, and he had some Panamanian rum. So boy, I was down at his house one night, and he said, let's drink some of that, and I did, and I could tell from that day forward I liked the effects of alcohol. Right, it made me feel better about myself. It made me talk more with other people. It made me, just gave me that sense of ease. Right. But I got drunk that night. I just didn't have one. I had multiple, and I got drunk, but I enjoyed it. So the rest of my high school career, I just drank on the weekends, never got in any trouble, but went to college, went to University of Georgia in Athens, and still, man, when I went to college, I wanted to be a certified public accountant. I knew day one what I wanted to be, because I was dating this girl, and her dad was a certified public accountant. I knew I was good in school, math, and I'm like, well, I can do this, So I studied hard. I went to, class every day. I had a roommate. He didn't go to class. He didn't study before anything, and he made straight A's. Now I had to study, so every night I studied, and but on the weekend, that's when my drinking started picking up. So, I started drinking more, and I hung around people that drank like I did, and we never did really get in much trouble in college at all. But I drank to get drunk. I enjoyed it. I had a lot of good times, being in college and drinking and partying, and you know. But no consequences at that point. And so I graduated college in less than 4 years. Went to university, got out and got a job in Atlanta for a company. And man, I was ready to go. Boy, I love making money. Right? I still like making money, but I love making money, and I wanted to grow fast in that company as I could. I wanted to do the best I could, and the only way I knew I could do the best I could was I had to work harder than you. So I got to know the cleaning people. I worked from sun up to sundown. I enjoyed it. I wanted to move up, and I did. I was at age 25. I was a controller for $100 million operation in Atlanta, a paper mill, and man, I was doing so good. That I just kept getting moved up and making more money and more responsibilities. And at age 25, I got my first DUI. What a big deal, I was out drinking on the weekends, didn't drink during the weeks, but on the weekends, man, we partied, right? So I got my DUI here in Gainesville. Actually, a funny story about that is it's within 100 feet of the local clubhouse here in town. I always wondered what those people did in there. I should have probably went in there that day and see what they were talking about. But I did the deal. I got through the DUI. I had back in the late 90s, 1995. They really didn't do too much to you back then, and so I got out from under that DUI. But I started drinking more, and I started having some consequences at work, and even my boss had to talk to me. I started drinking during the week, and did some things at work that weren't appropriate, and got disciplined for it, and but I brushed it off. I thought, well, it happened, and so I was doing so well, and I guess they kind of looked the other way on it because I was, doing well working for them. Doing so well, they wanted to move me to Indiana. At age 28 years old, they moved me to Indiana. Wasn't married, moved to Indiana to be the controller for a new startup joint venture operation between two paper companies, and it was $100 million brand new paper mill, and a lot of responsibilities. But I got up there, and man, within a year, I started, heavily drinking. My work performance went down, and I got 2 DUIs back to back in late 90s. And boy, they, I used to say I lost my job, but today I say I gave it away, man. I gave that great job that I worked so hard for, and I gave it away, and they told me they didn't need me anymore. So I lost my job, gave it away. And I had 3 DUIs at that point. They knew about the court system up there, basically knew about 2 of them, but they took my license for a year. It's not a right to drive, it's a privilege. And they took my license for a year and sentenced me to IOP up in Indiana. And during that time I was 30 years old. My dad said, son, very disappointed in you. You need to come back home. And he wanted to fix me, right? But I knew from going to IOP, the little short period I'd been going, that I had a problem, and I knew that AA was a way to help solve the issue. But I didn't know much about it. But I did. I went. Because court, boy, they made you go. I had to get a paper signed, and I went. But I got a sponsor, and I started working the steps, and I got 6 months of sobriety under my belt up there in Indiana, and came back to Georgia, and I got a sponsor here in Georgia, and started doing the deal. Continued to work the steps, was of service, went to meetings, helped chair meetings. I did exactly what this program teaches us to do, and I stayed sober. I was doing so well that I thought I didn't need you guys anymore. So basically in that 15 years, 5 of it, I look back on it, and I was, active in AA and helping and serving, and had a sponsor, and so on. And then years 5 through 10, I had to ask my ex-wife what happened here, because I forgot. She said, "You got religious." I said, "What?" She said, "You got religious." I said, "Really?" She said, "Yeah, and I remembered, but I didn't remember, right? We went to church a lot, and I was of service at church, helping people, and Bible school teacher, and, sober. But man, I could tell I was starting to slip away, and finally I stopped going to church. In years 10 through 15, I didn't do anything. I was a dry drunk, totally miserable. The misery of drinking and being alcoholic is almost as bad as being in this program, or being alcoholic and being, not doing anything related to my recovery, to, treat my recovery. So, years 10 through 15, I was married, had two daughters, beautiful daughters. And, I could tell I was moving closer to a drink, because I wasn't doing anything. And then I was working really hard, making a lot of money, but man, just totally miserable with life. So I thought, I needed to get a divorce, that's going to help everything out, and so I got a divorce, and left. That was, looking back on it now, it's just a premeditation towards, taking that next drink, and last thing I stopped doing before I took that first drink was I stopped praying. Prayer was always an important part of my life, but the last thing I stopped doing before I started drinking again was praying. And it's not like I was praying today for God to keep me sober, give me strength and courage to stay sober, and the next day I got drunk. I'm talking about months before that, maybe years before that. I stopped doing anything, and I went back to the old Craig. And the old Craig, the only solution to anything is good or bad, is take a drink over it. So I was divorced and started dating, and I was out on this date one night, and I went on a few dates with not drinking, but boy, one night, a glass of wine looked pretty good, and I had no defense, as it says in this book. I have no defense against that first drink, and I took it. And let me tell you, after 15 years of not drinking, I can testify my personal experiences. It is a progressive disease. Within a month, I was drinking like I did before I got sober. I drank to get drunk. I started drinking more. Frequency and quantity increased, and I was just back like I was. But I didn't care. I was divorced. I was 45 years old, had a good job, making money. I thought I could do whatever I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. Totally selfish, self-centered, living a life of misery, right? Of just destruction and misery, and finally, I told, don't ever tell anybody you're an alcoholic if you, and then go back out there and start drinking, and then try to unexplain that you're not an alcoholic, that you can really do this. Because my ex-wife, boy, she knew I was an alcoholic, right? And she knew that I could never drink again because I told her I couldn't. Being married for 11 years, she knew all she knew. So, boy, I was just, us alcoholics were good. I even was able to, make her think that I could drink again. But, I started having consequences. I started missing work. That's something I never did do. I started drinking in the mornings. That's something I didn't do before. I started doing some outside issues, which I didn't do before. And my life just started to come unravel, you know. And after 5 years of being out there, uh, I ended up with a fourth DUI and a blackout. I had good intentions that night of going out. I had no intentions of driving in a blackout that night. But this is what this disease does to an alcoholic. Is I went out and had drinks and more drinks and more drinks, and had no intention of driving, but somehow, some way, I got in my car and I drove. And thank God I didn't kill anybody out there. Uh, and I had a wreck, hit a curb. And it's the worst night of my life, but the best night. Because I was out of control. I knew, you guys had told me when I was around the first time that, if I went back out there, there's three choices: death, incarceration, or insanity. Well, handcuffs always get my attention, and it got my attention this time. And, I got taken to jail, and, I was sitting there laying in the jail cell. Only thing you got these days is a cell phone, right? They take that away from you. So I didn't know a phone number to call except my ex-wife's phone number, and I sure as heck wasn't going to call her. So I finally got bonded out of jail about 12 hours later. It was a Monday morning, supposed to go to work that day. Got an important job. I was supposed to be there. Well, I didn't make it to work. Finally got out, went and got my car. I thought I was going to be able to drive it. Looked at it, and it wasn't drivable. So I had to get a cab driver to take me home. And I got home, and I agree with 100% what it says in this book on page 25. It says, and I thought about this. I thought about going on to the bitter end. I thought about it. It crossed my mind. This alcohol, this poison I've been putting in my body, it makes you think weird things. It makes you think in an abnormal way. And I thought about going on to the bitter end. But, before I went to bed that night, I prayed because I knew about God. I knew about this program. And I prayed for an answer. And the next morning, he's got a sense of humor. I woke up and I had a text message at 5 o'clock in the morning from my ex-wife. She said, "Craig, I think you got a drinking problem." Now, she didn't know I just had been arrested. She didn't know I just got my fourth DUI in whatever 27-year history. But I did, and I was honest. And I told her, I said, "You're right, I do." And for me, that was a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience that I had through a text message. That was that prayer being answered. And from that day forward, I got honest. I got honest with her. I got honest with my employer. Thank God, my employer. I got honest with them. They're allowing me to speak at meetings. I can leave work and take a few hours off and go speak. And they're okay with that, because I've told them how important this recovery is. And they're very grateful that I am recovered today and not the person I was. So I got honest with those guys, and I jumped right back into this program. Thank God for Zoom. I love this. I've been to this meeting a few times before. I go to a lot of meetings, and Zoom has made it so I spend about 25% of every waking hour in a meeting. That's just for me. That's what I need to do. But I go to meetings all over the world, and Zoom has opened it up so we can all do that. So I started going to meetings. And within 10 days, I knew that I had to find a sponsor. This program taught me before that, got to work the steps and you got to do it with a sponsor. So I immediately got a sponsor, Troy. He's from the Alpharetta group out of Alpharetta, Georgia. Went to a meeting, and I was always taught, stick with the winners, find someone that's, got the message of recovery and that's doing the deal, and ask him to be your sponsor. And he had what I wanted. I remember hearing him talk for the first time. He welcomed me into the meeting. I think it's so important for us to welcome people into the meetings and make them feel a part of, and make them feel welcome at their meeting, because I didn't know anybody. It was the first meeting I've been to at the Alpharetta group, but it wasn't the last. But he welcomed me in, and stayed, and I listened to his message and others, and asked him to be my sponsor. And he said, Craig, uh, he said, what step are you on? I said, Troy, I'm on step 3. He said, oh, are you really? I said, yeah, man, I've been around this program before. I know about the steps, man. I done worked the first 2 by myself. He said, oh, no, you haven't. He said, you're on step 1. From that day forward, I was willing to be sponsored. I completely gave myself to this program. Either I'm going to, as it says, half measures avail us nothing, nothing. So I wanted to get everything I could get, and I did exactly what he told me to do, and that's what sponsors do. He told me to call him every day. I call him every day, So I went to step 1, and he said, write it out. He said, write how you're powerless over alcohol and how your life was unmanageable. So glad that he asked me, to write it out. I think it's so important for me to write down my thoughts, to journal, to get it out of here and on a piece of paper. Because I think we get so fearful of doing that step 4. We got to write down a list of things, gets, all that fear built up. I heard the biggest lie told in AA, I'm working on my step 4, right? But I did exactly what he told me to do, and I wrote it down, and I had to read it back to him and 2 of my AA brothers, over a Zoom meeting. We meet on Zoom, and I read it back to him, how I was powerless over alcohol and how my life was unmanageable. And man, talking about some freedom, just to get it out of here and out there. And so we immediately went on to step 2, and we did step 3 in person, and that was very, very powerful. I'm sponsoring someone right now, and I'm going to be doing a step 3 with them this weekend, and I'm going to do it the same way I was taught. We did it in person. We read, we prayed. He put his hand on my shoulder, and we prayed. And the other gentleman, we prayed. We all prayed. We got on our knees. And that's what we all got to have. That's what I got to have. I got to have a personal experience with these steps. Otherwise, it's just numbers and information up on a board, right? So he took me through the 3rd step, and I was ready. Yeah, I was ready. I was eager. I didn't want any more of that misery, man. I was mangled up. I've been put through the ringer, man. I wanted a different way of life, so I did what he told me to do. And went to step 4, and I made my inventory. Moral searching and moral inventory. Moral means good and bad. It's not listing all the bad things about Craig. I got to put all that stuff down, but it's good stuff too. There's good in all of us, and I have to remember that. To also talk about the good things. Because the good things I want to grow. Well, I work for a chicken company, and when we count inventory, we don't just count the bad inventory. We count the good too. Get rid of the bad, keep the good, sellable, so on. So did that moral searching, fearless moral inventory, wrote down, everything that I was asked to do. And boy, there's one thing I was holding on to, because I didn't want to do that step 5. And there's one thing that I didn't want to share with him, and I heard in these meetings. Thank God for these meetings, right? because I've heard other people talk about, I didn't share one thing, or I didn't share a couple things, or it took me 10 years to share something, or whatever it might be. So I prayed about it, and I wasn't for sure when I went to meet with him to do that step 5, I was going to tell him about that. But you know what? That's the power of this program, I did. I did tell him about it. Thank God I did tell him about it, because you know what he did? He shared some stuff about him, and I'm thinking, my goodness, all this stuff I got worked up in my head about something that I've done that's so bad. We've all done bad stuff, right? I had to get it out open, share it with him, and thank goodness I didn't hold on to it, So I did that step 5 with him, and such powerful, so powerful. Took 2 sessions. We got interrupted on the first session. Somebody came in, and my sponsor, he did a 12 step on someone. So we spent about an hour doing that versus finishing my step 5. And, that's the way it works, man. I learned a lot that day from watching him do a 12 step in somebody. So went back for my next session, and we finished up with step 5, and then went and did exactly what it says. He told me to go home, spend an hour by myself, and do steps 6 and 7. And to me, that step 6 and 7 is so important. I know there's not much about it in the big book, but I've studied up on it, and I think those are steps that God's working on my behalf, right? And I actually had a spiritual experience by doing it, and getting on my knees and humbly asking for these shortcomings to be removed. And I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, after it happened, after I did, I'm like, did he really hear me? My God, did he hear what I just asked for? For that plea. So I'd heard in a meeting over in South Africa, this lady Gwyneth was sharing one day about God objects, and she was talking about God objects. And I'm like, what the heck is a God object? I'd like to have some of those. And she was like, a God object is something in your house. It's a spiritual reminder. It might be a Bible, it might be a cross, it might be uh, anything, something that's spiritual in nature. So I'm like, man, I got all kinds of God objects. I got them in drawers. So I pulled them out, and I had my grandmother's Bible that my dad had given to her when he was 16 years old. And I pulled that out, and I had it laying around. And a couple of days after doing step 6 and 7, I opened it up, and I was reading in the cover, right in the very beginning of it. Back in the day, people used to write down in the family Bible what they wanted their funeral to be. Okay. And she had written in there who she wanted her pallbearers to be, what Bible verses she wanted to be read. And one of the Bible verses was Psalms 116. And it says, I love the Lord because he has heard my voice and my supplications. And supplications, I'm like, what the heck does supplications mean? It's to ask for something humbly. And I'm like, that was my personal experience with step 6 and 7. It's just one more thing that happens in this program that, gives me further confidence, belief that it's a spiritual experience, right? It tells us in the book that when we heal spiritually, we get better mentally and physically, and it's, man, that spiritual walk is so strong. But I got to have my own personal experience with it. And the steps, working it with a sponsor, helps to have that. So that was my step 6 and 7. Then we got on to step 8, and the whole point of working that step 5 is to make a list of shortcomings. And most of my shortcomings and character defects revolved around self, right? Selfish, self-centered, ego-driven. Just, I don't care about you. I just care about Cray. That's what I care about, right? And so I was thinking, when we were working that step 4, we listed these things out and talked about them. Well, how am I going to fix that, right? And it came to me by being of service. And I've learned by being of service and going to meetings, getting out of myself and helping others, I don't have time for all that anymore, right? And it's another beautiful part of this program is, how we learn, how I learn. But, also the whole point of doing that step 4 is to be able to make a list of people that I've harmed. And, I made that list of people that I harmed. And my sponsor said, now we're going to put them in order. We're going to work on the easy one. We're going to do the easiest one first and the hardest one last, right? So we listed it all out, and I had my daughters on there as number 1, and I had my ex-wife on there as the last one, right? And so I'll share with you just what my experience was on working that step 8, with my, or step 9 with my daughters. Um, you know, um, when I, since I'm divorced, I just come over on the weekends. Well, my youngest daughter, Karis, she's 10 years old now. She used to say, when I was drinking, she said, "Dad, do you remember last night?" I'm like, man, those are the worst words for a dad to hear from their daughter is, "Do you remember last night?" And I always play it, "Yeah, I remember last night," knowing I didn't remember everything, right? But that's what she used to ask me. And man, it really hit home after I got sober about the effects that I had on my kids. I got drunk one of her birthdays, and boy, she still remembers that. On her 8th birthday, she remembers I got drunk, and the intention wasn't on her, it was on me. So I had to make amends to both my daughters, but I was making amends to my youngest daughter, Karis. And, I told her, I was making the amends, and, admitting my wrongs and asking her what I could do to right the situation, ask her what, if I missed anything. And so you never know what a 10-year-old is going to ask, right? So I didn't know she was going to want a new iPhone, money. I don't know what she said, "You've already done it." I said, "What do you mean I've already done it?" She said, "You've already made your amends." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" She said, "You stopped drinking, right? Stop drinking." Now, how beautiful is that? That a 10-year-old, that's all she wanted, man. She just wanted her dad not to drink anymore. And my older daughter, her name's Kinsley. She's 13 years old, and making amends to her. And I said, "What can I do to right this wrong?" And she said, "Keep going to meetings. Keep going to meetings." Now, how simple is that, right? And so every time I do an amends, I still have more to do, but every time I do one, I never want to do it. That selfish, self-seeking nature of mine, that I fight every single day, doesn't tells me not to do it. Why ain't you gonna do that, man? Don't do that. But I can guarantee you, every time I do it, I feel better. It's what we have to do. Can't hang on to that stuff. I have to right my wrongs. Otherwise, it's something that could make me drink again, right? So I was ready to make amends to my ex-wife. This is something I also thank God for sponsorship, because I was trying to force the amends, right? And it's very important for me to make sure that the person I'm giving the amends to, that they're ready for it, right? Because it's not to cause any additional harm. But I thought I was ready, and I am ready. And I'm willing, no matter whenever. But she wasn't ready, right? She wanted me to send it to her. She wanted to read it first, so on and so on. And after talking to my sponsor about it, and we talked about making the amends, and I went back and told him that, "Hey, this is what happened." He said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, hold off, don't pursue it, don't try to force it, because at the end of the day, she don't know what I'm going to share, right? And she may be thinking it's this, and it's really this, and she's happily married now, and her life is going this way. And the last thing she wants to do is go back in time to remember X and whatever it is. Now, what I'm going to share with her is not going to harm her in any way, but in her mind, I don't know what she's thinking, but she's not ready for it. So, it's okay to pause. My sponsor said it's okay to pause, and but I'm willing to make those amends when the time is right. And step 10, 11, and 12 have been very, very important for me. I started out, on step 11, and sought through prayer and meditation, to improve my conscious contact with God as I understood Him. And boy, I thought I was doing a really good job. Now, there's no way you can mess this up, right? The only way you mess it up, I can mess it up, is not do it. But in the very beginning, I used to get in the shower and I'd pray and meditate about 5 minutes, and I thought I'd knocked knocked it out of the park. And I was, I mean, I was a start, but this program, this book has told me I got to maintain and enlarge, right? So I was in a meeting one day, and a good friend of mine, Amanda from California, was speaking, and she spoke on two-way prayer. And I'm like, what the heck is two-way prayer, right? I'm like, this sounds pretty good. I like it. Want to learn more about it. And that's what this program does. We hear things, and I think that's God, how God speaks to me is, through you guys. And she was talking about two-way prayer and how it benefited her and how it came out of the Oxford group. And it's a way to practice prayer and meditation through quiet time in the early morning hours. And, I started doing it 6 months ago, and I do it every single day, just about it. And man, what a powerful experience. And it's a way to, basically the gist of it is it's writing my own meditation. And I still read other people's meditation books, and that kind of spurs my mind, gets me going, gets me thinking. But two-way prayers is simply writing down a question that you have for God, your higher power, God of your understanding, and then writing down thoughts that come to you after that. And then the most powerful part is having God answer back to you in his own voice, and you put it on pen and paper. Man, it's powerful. Love it, and it's enabled me to grow spiritually. And I taught my daughters how to do it. And my youngest daughter, Karis, she does it every single day. And to see what she writes and see what comes out of her, how she thinks and how she gets it on a piece of paper, and the experience she has with it is beautiful. It's all a gift of this program. My job is not just to carry the message, in my opinion, it's not carry the message to other alcoholics, but I carry it to my daughters. I carry it to my coworkers. I carry it to my neighbors. I share it with everybody because and by doing it, it's been helpful for me. And then, um, step 12, and I go back and I think about the reasons why I went back out there and what happened to me. And, I said that, prayer was something that, the last thing I stopped doing, but long before that, I stopped practicing these principles in all my affairs, and I definitely stopped carrying the message. But I can tell you this much: one of the people I helped carry the message to was the first person I called after I got arrested, got out of jail. I said, Alan, I need to go to a meeting. He said, Craig, be at this meeting at this time. And so I did. And the actual place that he asked me to go to was the place I was talking about before. It was like 100 feet from where I got my first DUI. I look out when I go to that meeting in person, I look out the window and I could see where I got arrested the first time. So, but that's how this program works, is, it's too much. I can't do it on my own. It's, without help, it is too much for me. And this Alcoholics Anonymous is 12 steps, and working it with a sponsor, I can gratefully sit here today and say I've recovered. Now, I know because it says it in the big book, and I've had personal experience. It is a daily reprieve, period, end of story. I've got a temporary stay just for today, and if I don't get up in the morning and say, my name is Craig and I'm an alcoholic, I'm in trouble. Because when I do that and spend time in prayer and meditation, I know exactly what I got to do that day to stay sober. I got to treat this disease every single day. I drink every day, got to treat it every day. I used to drink for hours a day. I got to spend, for me right now, I had to spend hours a day in meetings and helping others. And by doing that, I can say my life is completely different than it was just a little bit over 1 year ago. And that's the beauty of this program. I'd like to read one thing. I know I said a few things out of the big book, but hey, this right here is our textbook, right? I love it. It's got everything in there we need. Simple set of instructions, clear-cut directions, as it says. I'd like to finish with this. I love what it says about sufficient substitute. And this Let me find it right quick. On page 152 of the big book, it says, yes, there is a sufficient substitute, and it's vastly more than that. It is the fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous. There you will find release from care, boredom, and worry. Your imagination will be fired. Life will mean something at last. The most satisfactory years of your existence lie ahead. Thus, we find the fellowship, and so will you. You know, that's, to me, that sums up what this program is all about. You know, there is a sufficient substitute, and it is Alcoholics Anonymous. And man, it's a beautiful program for drunks like me. It saved my life. And you can talk to my daughters. You could call them on the phone right now, and they've went down this road with me. They've had a personal experience with Alcoholics Anonymous too, you know. And you could ask my coworkers; they've been right along the way too. I've drug them all. They've all trudged this road with me, you know, and it's been a beautiful experience. And today, by being able to share with others, and I'm free. You know, I don't have to worry about, you know, I'm not worried about what you think or what my neighbor thinks or what whoever thinks. I know that, you know, God's doing for me today what I could not do for myself. But I also know it's a daily reprieve. I'm one drink away from going back out there, you know, and I gotta distance myself every single day. I got to get one step further away from this deal, from alcohol. King Alcohol, he's up here. The disease centers in our mind. It's not out here on the deck working out, right up here, and it wants to see me drunk or dead. Period. And as long as I remember that every single day, and I know I treat it every day, I can keep it arrested, sitting down in the back seat, and most importantly, keep me from getting arrested. Right. So very grateful to be here with you guys today. It's been an honor and privilege always to speak at AA, and it's saved my life. So very, very grateful for it. Thank you.